my problem, not my problem. I know it's a choice.
For the past 2 weeks, while you've all been at home, I've been crisscrossing the country doing consulting work. And I've been going to these really exotic locations, such as Detroit, Michigan, and Newark, New Jersey. It's been beautiful. But most of the time, when I'm not consulting or I'm not on a plane, the rest of the time, what I do is sit in airports. I sit there in one of the seats, waiting, hearing about flights being delayed, and people, can they please check their baggage, and this person's been upgraded, and it goes on for hours and hours. And usually what I do is sit there with my headphones on, looking around, and I people watch. Now, 2 Saturday nights ago, about 9 p.m, I was sitting in Phoenix Airport, waiting for my delayed flight. Sitting there, I look over the other side of the aisle, and I see this man. He's a guy in a military outfit. He's sitting there, kind of staunchly in his seat, just waiting for the plane, same as me. I was kind of like looking at him out of the corner of my eye. And after a while, he stood up, and he went over, walking towards the restroom. And as he was walking, he stopped midway, knelt down, picked up a piece of trash off the ground, and kept walking. Popped it in the bin, and walked into the restroom. Now, for me, sitting right here, watching him, I was fascinated by this. It wasn't a big deal, it was just some guy picking up a piece of trash in an airport. But I thought, you know, I'm sitting here in this room right now. There's probably 400 people in this room, including me, and none of us have bothered to pick that up or even notice it this whole time. Why? Because it's not our problem. We don't work there at the airport. It's not our place of residence. If that was my home, of course I'd pick up a piece of trash. If that was on this stage right now, of course I'd pick it up. But I was a passenger at an airport, sitting there waiting. Now, as I flew home that night, I kept thinking over and over again about this military man, how he took the time to do this. I thought, well, maybe it's because, you know, he's in the military, so he's disciplined. He has this kind of service mentality. Or maybe he's just a neat freak, who knows, right? But I wouldn't do it. Why wouldn't I do it? I'm a good person, I work hard in my job, I'm professional, I'm nice to my friends and family. But there's this kind of like barrier, this area where I don't go, where I don't bother to help. And that kind of started to bother me as a person. Why am I like that? So I was thinking about Abraham Maslow and this famous thing that he created called the hierarchy of needs. Now most of you have probably heard of this in some way. In the 1940s, he devised this idea that human beings have these different levels of need. And at the very base, we have the need for physiological safety, basically food, clothing, shelter. Above that, we have the need for certainty and security, which is financial security, health, things like that. Above that, we have the need for love and belonging, being part of a family or a community. On top of that, we have the need for esteem, for status. And then finally, at the very apex, we have self-actualization. Now, for most of us in this room, I believe that we are close to self-actualization. That's the reason you're in Toastmasters, is because you as a person want to improve. But eventually, towards the end of his life, Maslow realized that there's a level above actualization. And that is transcendence. And transcendence is where we start to contribute to the world in a bigger way. And I started thinking about this on the plane. I was there, I thought, why am I stuck at this level of actualization? I'm very good at improving myself, but not good at giving and contributing to the world. And I always say, well, it's because I'm too busy. I'm focused on myself. I'm doing what I do in my life. But it didn't feel right anymore for some reason. I kept thinking about that man picking up a piece of trash. Now the next morning, after I got home from the airport, I went to sleep. Got up the next morning and I took my trash out. I took it over to the trash room in my apartment complex, and as usual, like all of you who live in an apartment complex, there's bags of trash all around the thing, right? They don't put them into the bin, they put them next to the bin. And usually what I would do is go, you stupid people, why can't they just pick up the trash and put it into the bin? It's right here, it's so obvious, it goes from here into here. No one was around this time. Instead of doing that, I just picked up their pieces of trash, their bags, and I put them into the bin. And guess what happened? Nothing. No one said, yay, congratulations, right? I was just there by myself, but I felt different. I actually contributed. That room was now clean, and the trash was all in the bin. Okay, so I went back to my apartment. 2 weeks later, well, 2.5 days later, I went back to the airport for my next trip. And I was waiting in line for security. Now, as everyone knows, the joy of security is the best part about the airport. You're standing in line, taking off all your clothes, getting all your possessions out, shoving them in those little bins. And as I was getting closer to the line where the bins are, suddenly there was hardly any left. And I'm thinking, great, now I'm going to have to wait for the stupid security guy to bring more bins over. There's a big pile over the back there. Why do I have to wait all this time? And I thought about that guy picking up a piece of trash. So I walked over. I said to the guy, can I take some of these bins back? And he said, oh, okay. So I took them back. And I put the bins down. And then I took one out, and I put my stuff in there, and I kept going. The guy behind said, hey, thanks. I said, no problem. And I felt good. Then I got onto the plane, and I was in group 6, high status. And in group 6 in front of me was this old lady just toddling along with the most ginormous suitcase you've ever seen, bigger than her. And she's trying to push it up the aisle, and she's banging into everyone as she's going. And I'm thinking, come on, lady, I'm in seat 24 right at the back. And she's in seat 21. She finally gets there. And I thought, there's no way she's going to get this up in the bin up the top. So I said, would you like me to put that up for you? She said, oh, that'd be wonderful, thank you. So I picked it up, I put it up. And as I looked around, everyone in the aisles who was sitting already was smiling. They were thinking, what a good guy. I felt good. So I started thinking about, wow, this is an interesting thing. I've done all these acts of service, these things I didn't need to do. I could have easily said, it's not my problem to put that trash into the bin. It's not my problem to go and get more trays for the people at the airport. I could have let one of the stewards pick up that bag for that lady. But I said, instead of it being my problem, it was an opportunity to contribute. And in these ways, I think we all have these opportunities to actually offer small acts of service, little tiny things that we don't realise are right in front of us. I sat in that airport for 25 minutes watching everyone around me, but I didn't notice that little opportunity right in front of me. I think today, especially in the world we live in, we have this tendency to think we have to offer big charitable things. We have to volunteer our time, we have to give some money, we have to do something bold. But really, I think a lot of the time it comes down to those little acts. And very often, they're caught up in the idea that it's not my problem. So I would challenge to you, as I've been challenging myself, sometimes it's not easy, sometimes it's not convenient, sometimes you don't want to be bothered. But when you see those little times when you say it's not my problem, maybe that's your chance to offer something bigger to the world.
He's going to talk about how he put together the speech. He's been toiling and struggling for 7 years on the speech. No, just kidding.
Well, actually, this is the second time I've given this speech as well. So, surprise, Joe. I do write them out because I write them as blog articles first. That's something I like to do. And I publish them, and then whichever ones resonate for me as well as for the people who read them, I like to convert into speeches. This is a true story. 2 weeks ago, I did actually have this chance and see this person walking across, pick up this piece of trash. And I'm sure it happens all the time in airports. I'm sure it's not a big deal. But being a writer and a speaker, I thought, this is a good example of like an everyday thing that I could try and expound on. And it is a true thing. When I got on the plane, I started thinking, why did I bother doing that? So this became kind of like the narrative that I wanted to write a story around. Now, I have obviously a lot of contest speeches I've delivered hundreds of times, and I thought rather than just talk about one of those, I wanted to show you a speech I'm building, because this, for me, is a very rough draft right now. It's not something that I'm very happy with, but I feel like it's got potential. So what I'm always looking for when I'm writing a speech, the first thing is one singular idea. And this idea of it's not my problem, I think resonates with most people. We've all felt, I can't be bothered, it's not my problem. And the idea of picking up a piece of trash isn't a big stretch. It's not something that really struggles. So I was trying to think of things that related to that and the experiences I had over the last couple of weeks. And they were all true stories. I put the other trash bags in the bin. I did get some more trays for the people at security, helped the lady with her bag on the plane. And we've seen those things happen. So my challenge was, okay, how do I shape that into a message? Now, there's this famous thing from Socrates, some of you might have heard, called, he says, if you're going to do any sort of rhetoric, which is a speech that tries to convince, you need to have logos, pathos, and ethos. I don't know if anyone's heard that before. Basically, logos is the logic, pathos is the heart, and then ethos is the call to action, the altruistic endeavour that you want people to do. Not every speech has all of them. So Jamar's speech has a stronger pathos because he talks about his daughter. Okay, Greg's speech has a great amount of pathos because of the characters. This one in particular doesn't have a lot of strong characters except me, because we don't know the military guy's name, we don't know the old lady's name. The only person I name actually is Abraham Maslow, who's this kind of mythical, logical figure. So for me right now, this speech which I'm struggling with is, and it's not a bad thing, but this is what you have to go through, is, okay, it's very logically sound, it makes sense with the different levels of human need. I've got some application in there in terms of I learned a lesson, now I'm actually using the lesson, but it doesn't have sort of a grand finale yet. And that's the thing I'm stuck with, and that's why I wanted to deliver it today, because sometimes when you deliver a speech, something comes out that you weren't expecting. You go, oh, I like the way I said that, or that's a better ending, something like that. So what I'm shaping right now is this idea that not my problem is actually the opportunity. When you feel not my problem, that's when you have a chance to contribute. So you can see that only came to me probably about a day and a half ago after I ran this at my club. But you can see how it slowly evolves and improves. That's kind of where I'm at right now. What I'll do is I'll watch the recording of this later and wait to myself. And I'll cut it down a little bit. What I did for this version today that the people from my club didn't see on Thursday is I put physicality into it. So I blocked that out last night in the lounge room, me standing, and then the other guy over here, and I needed him to walk past me, which is actually what happened. So I thought, okay, how can I do that on the stage? So I have to use the whole stage to do that. The idea of being on the plane was here. I put the security people over here. The lady on the bag was kind of like the finale I put here, and the trash was way over there. So I had to block everything, because if it was all in the same spot, if I had the trash can, and then I had the airport, and then I had the lady, it's all in that same area. So I've been blocking those things the last day and a half, and I had to remember that as well as all the lines that I've put together. There we go.
I have a lot of questions for him. Who wants to go first? Anybody?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What's the most challenging part when you structure any speech?
It's trying to make it interesting on different levels. So it's got to have the humor kind of base to it. It's got to be fun and interesting. I think it's also got to have something of worth. If it's just funny, it's not as tangible, and you don't walk away with something. But then I think it's also got to have sincerity as well. Sometimes I find, especially when you write a speech and you try to logically put it together, it loses the heart. You know, so you as a speaker, you have a lot of heart, so your challenge will be probably the reverse, which is putting the logic in there.
Daniel, I find humor in spontaneous situations is relatively easy.
Yes.
Pre-thought out humor is very difficult for me. How do you find something funny? How do you think about it that it will become funny, or when you deliver it?
What I'm learning is the more relatable it is to your audience, to you as a person and to them, the more it's funny for some reason. It's actually not a joke, it's just kind of an acknowledgement. So, you know, me saying about the trash there, I could have just said, you know, there was all these trash bags in there, and but I thought of all these things that I felt, and I thought, like, I have to step over their trash to get to the bin to put mine in. Can't these stupid people see that it goes right here? We've all thought those things. And they're not really jokes per se, but they're just feelings that we all related to. Same as being in, group 6, right? On the plane, you're like, yeah, group 6, everyone knows that feeling. So it's not really funny per se, but it's like, we all relate to it. And that's what I'm looking for, rather than, let me tell you a funny situation. Although having said that, if there is a dialogue between two people, sometimes that can be very funny. So if someone says one thing, you can see that in Greg's speech, the guy in the store, when he said, only, whatever he said, only a real man can wear fringe, right? That's a great line, which is very funny. So dialogue can have a lot of humour in it as well.
You're very good with the gestures. Do you work on the physical side of it much?
Definitely, yeah. I have to overextend because my culture, being from Australia, it's kind of like England. We're very like, hi, how are you? So I have to learn to, and using the stage for me brings you into the story. So if I just stay right at the front, it's great, but it doesn't have any depth. And using stage depth is a challenge, coming back. So what I was doing there, you'll notice when I was doing the hierarchy of needs, I started low, But then I started to step back a little bit to make it more grand as I went to the top. Just a tiny little subtle thing, whereas in the past I just sort of stayed like that. You can see the difference where I just step back a little bit. It gives it a bit more grandness. Tiny little things that you learn. I would suggest, if you can, watching some acting, people how they block. I have some good friends who are actors and they stage and they'll say if you, exactly like Greg was saying, turning a certain way, things like that. Subtlety is very important, but adds a lot.
When you're thinking about your speech, one question, do you kind of plot it out as a movie or a little video in your head?
I do a lot of things. So I will always write it. So if I find in writing it, I condense it. So it's almost like, is this interesting on paper to me? And then I actually do exactly what Greg does. Sometimes I'll record the scripted version and I'll listen to it and I'll try. I haven't done it with this one because this is brand new. But now what I'll do is I'll start to tighten it down from the video I'll watch. So I kind of have a visual in my head. I tend to work in vignettes. So I think a lot of people do this where I had this idea of me sitting in the airport and then the person walking past me. So that was one vignette. And then the other one was at the security, because that was really the first time I demonstrated doing something for other people. So I had these like mini movies, but not a full overarching movie. So I just kind of bring little bits in, almost like scenes, I guess, in the movie. And then hopefully it becomes an overarching thing.
Okay, yeah, I have a question. You've spoken at TEDx's, right?
Yes.
Okay. Little red circle. How do you use that space like you're trying to use here?
It's very hard. So you sort of, in mind, you'll see me, I stand like this, and I have to stop myself from moving, because I'm so used to, from Toastmasters, being able to walk and my keynotes that I do. But when you're stuck like that, you've got to go, don't move. You have this tendency to do it. So you have to, I would practice my speech, that TEDx speech, over and over with my feet planted. And I would actually concentrate on my feet, put my focus into my feet, so I felt very grounded. And that was the only way I could stop myself. But I can see in the video of mine, there's a part where I almost move, like, no, stay there. Because I'm so used to having, and I could have added so much dimension to that speech. The only thing I could actually do, and one of them was I turned around and I looked at the screen. So it was just a tiny bit of movement, which I wanted to do, which most TEDx speakers don't do. Having said that, they're getting a bit more lenient. One of my friends has done a few and he just wanders around. So you're supposed to be in one spot.
Any other questions?
What's your process to getting through your competitive speech for next year?
That's the biggest challenge for me, is I have to have something that I really want to say. You know, this speech for me is interesting, and I think it will form part of a keynote eventually, this idea of not my problem, but it's not compelling enough, this speech. It doesn't have enough impact, it doesn't mean enough to me. Because you can see it's a small incident that happened. Now, if in the next couple of months I have an incident where I helped someone, and I didn't realise that I helped them so significantly through thinking it's not my problem, maybe that will change, because this speech will evolve with that. But most of the time, there'll be an idea or something that will sort of stick in my mind, and I can't get rid of it. I keep thinking of the idea or the theme or the concept. And then I think, how can I share this in a way that means something of worth to others? Because if it's just about me and what's interesting to me, that's not as valuable. So that's where the biggest struggle, I think, is finding the first kernel of the idea that's significant. And then from there, you start to build it.
What's the timeline? How long before competitively you need to solidify it?
It's hard to say. For me, I would say it could, like I could have a speech in my head for a year beforehand. It just depends on the group. I would say at least 2 months you would need something in your mind before you start competing. But more than competing, I would say think about taking it out into other venues. Ken and I were just talking about this before as well. I think, you know, in Toastmasters in particular, I'm known for the contest speeches, but what I'm really enjoying is taking these messages that I've developed into non-Toastmaster groups, because they haven't heard it, and they don't care if you and ah and use a weird gesture. They care about what you're saying. So take whatever message you have, take it to an audience outside, and see how they resonate with the message, because that's going to help you to, then when you do, if you want to take it for a competition speech, it's already going to have validity. It's going to have something of worth.
Do you compete with humorous speeches as well as the international ones, or do you just...
I have done one humorous district contest, which I won by accident, I swear. That was my first one ever. I like the humorous contest. I find the challenge with international is it's both. It's got to be funny, but it's got to have heart as well.
Yeah.
And that's a bigger challenge for me. I think if you, nothing wrong with being a humorous speaker. I think it's got a lot of work. But sometimes it's almost like I just need to be funny and I need to be funnier. And that's one of the things, people have said to me, oh, you should do stand-up comedy. My only frustration with that is it has no meaning. It's just you heckling things or talking about how things suck or whatever it is, right? I want it to actually have something where they go, that's true, I'm going to take that in, So yeah, the humorous contest can be a great entry point. And I think what I like about the international contest is there are no rules, so you can be just a pure humorous speaker. But the ones that make it further usually have some pathos, something significant involved. Thank you.